I think we get we get a doorway to an opportunity to understand what we should be doing.
You know, you're sounding very much like Jason Brashears of the Archaics channel. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, I am. Although it's hard to say how much we have. We have some similarities and other things that are not. So yeah, but yeah, I know Jason.
So Jason believes that there is a real world, that this is a computer simulation, that we're going through a series of lives that happen relatively quickly, maybe just a few hours in the real world somewhere, and then we're back out into this real world. And this simulation is supposed to be, like Tom Campbell says, a virtual reality trainer for consciousness, but it was overridden by this artificial intelligence, which Jason calls AIX, artificial intelligence X, unknown. Do you believe the same, or in your theory, does it diverge from what I just said?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly one theory. You got the challenge. Okay, the world's insane. The world's a clown show. Well, the question is, has it always been a clown show from the moment of its inception, or was it something else at one point in time and then changed into the clown show? And I'm on the, I guess, on the small side now that is beginning to say that it's always been insane, just to various levels. There's been times when it's been higher, times when it's been lower. I know when I go to sites like when I'm in Giza or Dashur or Abu Sir or Teotihuacan in Mexico, I feel I'm touching a place that's so far back in the past that is, or it might not be in the past, because this is interesting about simulation, right? A simulation starts on a day one. So there's a day one that, just like in Westworld, right? The robots think it's 1861, but there hasn't been an 1860. There wasn't really an 1859. Those are just memories that have been implanted in their mind. So if this is a simulation, we have to ask, well, how old is the simulation? Because if the simulation, say, is 200 years old, then everything we know of its history before 200 years is just Westworld backstory. It's not actually real in our simulation. It might be real whatever we're copied from. So it makes it so difficult even to start trying to track how this realm has been, how it wasn't been. And maybe that's the problem. We can see the part that's before the simulation that comes from the copy that might have been a good place, but maybe our simulation right from day one has never been good. So bizarrely, both of these theories might actually be correct, just when you apply it to the start date of when the simulation began, as like a marker of insane before and maybe not so insane on the other side of it.
Yeah, there's a quote from your book here that kind of supports what you're saying, which is, "We live in a physical and energetic slaughterhouse. You are living in many ways as a computer game character or a semi-programmed robot in a very insane system. How many worms have just died in the last 5 seconds to feed all the birds? How many mice died to feed all the cats? Have you ever heard a worm scream while it is being eaten? What set up such an insane and sick system?" I often wonder that too when you watch these nature shows and you see that other animals have to rely, they can only rely on eating other animals. And as much as you want to say, well, it's God's plan, it's nature, the animal doesn't really feel that much pain, the one that's being eaten. I mean, still, that animal has got to be in fear, it's got to be in pain, it's got to be suffering. What kind of system, David Icke said this in one of his books a long time ago, what kind of system would set up something where we have to rely on eating other beings to exist? Your comments.
Yeah, to me, that indicates the insanity. There's so many other ways that it could be set up, but it's been set up in this way. And I mean, we have this problem. We can see nature in its beauty. Nature has a beauty side of it, right? And we tend to like to only try to see that side of it. Like I said, we forget the slaughter side of it. We forget that part of it. Now, this answer takes us a bit more into the Robert Monroe material, because Robert Monroe had talked about that there were these that the beings, he didn't call them archons like the Gnostics did. I can't remember if he had a name for the beings that run this thing, but whatever he called them, the people from somewhere, I can't remember what the exact name was, but he said there were different segments that they ran in this realm. And it seemed like he first described dinosaurs, then he described plants, then he described animals, and he talked about each time there was like an upgrade to the energy system. But when they got to the first round of animals, he said that by accident, they found out that when the animals were in conflict, and particularly when an animal was dying to another animal, that was the greatest loosh harvest that these beings got. So they realized we have to shut that system down and make a brand new one that'll create as much conflict and as much suffering as possible, because you might say that was giving them this idea, this thing, word called loosh is like a specialized energy that beings give off, particularly when we're afraid or when we're suffering or when we're in some kind of pain. So they created what our world is, and according to them, we were brought in here. According to Robert Monroe, we were brought in here as specialized conflict action individuals to create as much of this loosh as possible. That's his theory, and that would explain where you're at with the nature thing. I had a secondary vision at the end of that chapter, which was the complete opposite, which my vision from 2009 indicated that it was nature that actually created us, that we weren't actually created by the creator beings at all, and we had nothing to do with aliens or anything else, that literally nature created us to help it. Nature realized it was trapped here. It couldn't get out. It created humans because we don't fit in here. We don't belong on Earth. We just don't fit in here properly. It almost made sense that nature made us to help all of us get out. And I kind of hold a little bit of that. I like that feeling where even if I am going to find the exit to the matrix and I'm on my way out, I want to take some trees and some rocks and some giraffes and some fish with me, because I feel like maybe that's part of our job.
When you say humans don't fit in here, it's kind of like,
yeah,
where do we come from? You know, they talk about the missing link, and also we're just so different, right? Like, we're so different as human beings, black, white, Asians, and geography can't account for that, right? Like that, just because a group of people evolved in one region or another, just because the climate doesn't really make sense to me. Also, what about our eating habits as a species? We don't agree at all on what we're supposed to eat. It seems like the animals know what they're supposed to eat, but we as humans don't. Are we supposed to be vegan, or are we supposed to be carnivore, omnivore? This is a debate that's been raging on for eons, and maybe that's the case because we're just how do you say nature put us here? Can you explain?
Yeah, well, we can think of all these things like we're the only creature that needs to make fires to stay warm. We have to have clothing. We have to have shelters. We don't know what to eat naturally. We're not really sure what our diet's supposed to be. We're the only ones. Like think about, we get hay fever. You're allergic to grass. What sort of possible evolutionary power is it to be allergic to the thing you're going to be out with all the time, or color blindness, or all these other goofy things that humans have that just don't make sense? So once you begin to break it down, we're the only being that doesn't like walk out of here with complete total instinct, knowing exactly what it's supposed to do and why and how, and not have to think about it. We literally have to think about everything. So yeah, I'd had a vision that seemed, like I say, to indicate that, and I'm not saying it's true, it's just a vision I had after a Native Indian drumming ceremony with a medicine man friend of mine. And it just came up as this idea that it was that this realm was built with no humans. It was a realm of nature, animals and whatnot, and it was nature that realized they were trapped here. It's nature that's trapped, and so we were built from the nature. They gave it that we hear things like I have a powered animal. Well, our powered animal is really the animal spirit that gifted us a spark of animal life to come in here. That's what our power animal is. We have a plant. We have a plant. We have a power plant, we have a power stone, we have a power everything. The problem was once we started to infuse ourselves, and that's why nature allows us to use it. In the vision, it said, so humans don't belong here, so you need to chop down our trees to stay warm. You need to kill some of our animals to eat here. So we're going to allow that, but you have a job to do. Your job is open this door that we can't open. The problem is these archons, or what you call these beings that are attempting to control this place, saw that right away humans are a big problem, and they actually started manifesting from outside the realm in the astral directly into this realm in order to make things difficult and create the conflict and the problems and the constant humans attacking each other, warfare, everything else was all designed to get us to forget why we were here and what we're doing. A perfect example of this is the movie Dark City. Dark City, which is a fantastic movie. It's actually the original Matrix. It's like the first, it's actually Matrix 1, if you understand how the things are running. And in Dark City, we never find out where the humans came from. We never found out why they got there. We never found out how the city was built as base. All of that stuff, just like this Plato's Cave story, is ignored. It's just not there. And that's very similar to where we really have no idea truly where we're from, where we're not from. And I think what we're calling, I guess that's anthropology. I think all of that anthropology of our origins is just one giant smokescreen to hopefully give us enough information that we won't ask enough questions. Because if we start asking real questions, we're going to find out none of the answers we're given make any sense.
Yeah, it does seem that much of the information that we're given about our history, our diet, who we really are, everything is backwards. I was just having a conversation with my mother, and I was telling her that most of my diet is composed of saturated fat now from animals. And she said, well, that's terrible. And I said, no, Mom, because what they told you was backwards. They told you don't eat any fat, eat sugar and carbs.
Right.
But it's really the other way. So there's a lot of conditioning because the system can condition you. And you said and I have the quote, but you said somewhere that this is a good one. You talked about Gilligan's Island. You said that there were people that actually wrote letters to the U.S. Navy back in the 60s or 70s when Gilligan's Island, which was a famous TV show in America, where there were 7 stranded castaways on an island. And people couldn't differentiate a TV sitcom and reality. And so and it wasn't like a spoof. People really thought that they were stranded.
The U.S. Coast Guard, they got like thousands of letters asking them why they weren't going to rescue these people off this island. The first couple of ones they thought was a joke, but they realized people really, but they realized that the people thought the TV show was real. Or how many times, especially in the 1970s, did soap opera stars get attacked on the street? Because of the way you treated Constance last week, and people. Just the line is blurred between reality and not. If they can't even tell the difference between a television show and reality, how conditioned and ignorant are the majority of the population? That gets us back to, are they non-player characters? Are they literally, how many of our population are really human and how many aren't?
Yeah, I have a couple questions here. So let me put a comment in. So you can imagine a lot of people sitting home, they're watching their TV screens, they have CNN on, and they hear Don Lemon talking. So if they believe Gilligan's Island is real, then everything that CNN says is real as well, in their minds. And you're right, they could be NPC. And I want to just ask you a quick question.
Obviously, just to get you on that, here's a book everybody should read. It's called The 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television. The guy who wrote it was named Jerry Mander. This book came out in 1977, so like 40 years ago. He explained how a screen actually causes changes in the body, changes in the brain, makes you easy to control, easy to manipulate, easy to fall for authority. It's like our world right now is described 40 years ago, and bizarrely, the thing we're all staring at right now is part of the entire process. So when you're talking about like watching the news has for 50 or 60 years figured out the exact mechanism, the exact presentation they need to get into the subconscious. And it's always interesting. This is an interesting thing to think about. If they put out a story first and they say whatever they want to say, and the story comes out and the pictures are there and people are shocked, but then the next day, we were mistaken. That was an error. We're sorry about that. The story was wrong. People will still remember the first day. That's what got into the subconscious first. So it doesn't matter what they tell the story is later. It's what was the first story that comes in, and they know that. So, we're dealing with that on a daily basis. And if you don't know this stuff, just like the manipulation is so easy to get, and once it's in, it's hard to get out.
What percentage of Earth's population do you think are NPC? I know it's a difficult question, but if you just have an idea in mind, just share with our audience.
my guess, it used to be maybe 20 or 25% when I was doing all my practices and my exercises. I'm shooting now maybe 85, 90%, like that high.
Wow.
And one of the things that helped me indicate who might be and who might not be was, and this was again, I did so many exercises back from what the shamans gave me. I read Carlos Castaneda's books, and I did them. Like I actually, everything that was in the books, I did. And back then, I would test people, and what I found really strange is certain people would have all sorts of possible answers, all sorts of possible discussion points, and they could go. But other people, they had a really tight box. It didn't matter what the subject was we were talking about. The answers tended to be almost exactly the same. Like there was like a limited set of answers, a limited set of things they could say. And I would test these people. And I would go on to like subject matters you would never talk about. Oh, let's talk about ski jumping or something. No one's going to talk about ski jump. Let's talk. Their answers would be the same as if you're talking about construction on the street. It was really weird. And that's when I started to realize there are these people. I don't know if they're people or not, but at least they're living in a really tight box of possibility and answers, and they can't for any reason go outside of this. And not just thought, it's literally what they say. It was weird.
Yeah, and I think, well, let me just say this. My audience is not NPC, okay? They're free thinkers, they're real people, and it's a small audience. So thank you, YouTube, for eliminating all the NPCs, shadow banning me and giving me just a nice core group. No matter how many videos
or the NPCs might come later and try to comment, but they probably don't watch early on, right? Like we know the bots and things are moving on these things all the time, but I noticed for sure, like if I put a video out, and certainly in the first, say, day, the ones who watch in that first day are guaranteed they're people working through stuff, and I'm really thankful, like probably you are. Some of the people in your channel and the comments I get have been so helpful to me. They've opened doors that I never would have known about. They've made suggestions I never would have made a suggestion about. But when you start watching, maybe day 3, day 4, things are different. And so yeah, there's a core group though that I would 99.9% check marked.
No, absolutely, I agree with you on that. I wouldn't be anywhere where I am right now without the viewers. From the beginning, they were recommending, suggesting, giving me feedback. So I've taken it all to heart to create the channel to what it is right now. I mean, you're a direct result. This interview is a direct result of some viewers saying, "Hey, get Howdy on your show." So thank you to the viewers. And Howdy, like, I just want to simplify things right now. Just really simplify it down to kindergarten level. Okay. Just in case somebody's watching, they're a little confused, or maybe they're doing something else and they didn't catch everything you said. But you used to believe, if I'm not mistaken, you used to believe, very similar to many spiritual people, that the world is a school and we come here to learn, right? And we reincarnate into the school. God is a benevolent God, put us here for a reason. And when did that shift occur where you started to believe that we are living in a soul trap? Was that like in 2019?
Well, I mean, I bumped into this stuff long ago, 2002, 2003. I'd already began studying right after the 9/11 event. That opened a lot of doors for me to how this reality was really run, and who and what was running it and why. And I took about 4 or 5 years to study that material. Then I had my death experience, and I was dropped into the void. Like I was literally dropped into oneness. And that took my attention for like 10 years. It seemed like, as that's what the books all said, this is the pinnacle. If you reach the oneness, if you reach the totality, the absolute, you're done. And so I actually falsely believed that, and I lived that for 10 years. But eventually, a lot of difficulties over those 10 years, as well as a lot of clarity, led me to start going back to where I used to be, things I had seen a long time ago and kind of turned off. And for me, I began to finally realize this can't be a school when you start digging into the near-death experiences of people, and particularly those who have pre-birth memories. And they're all very clear that they got a memory wipe. That in this pre-birth field, they remembered their past life very clearly, even though they can't remember it now. They knew that they remembered it, and then these beings, whoever they were interacting with, made them forget and put them back in here. And to me, this idea that if we're being memory wiped and you can't remember your past lives, this can't be a place of learning, because learning comes from, a big part of it is seeing what we did yesterday, seeing what worked and what didn't work, mistakes we made, things we did well, so we know how we want to respond today. If when we go into grade 5, we don't forget everything we learned in grade 1 and 4 and have to learn to add and subtract again. We know that we can move into multiplication and division. So that to me right away was the indication there's a problem. And that leads us to the TV show Westworld, because Westworld is all about the memory wipe, or season 1 was. The robots would die, they would get taken back to the control center, they get cleaned up, they get fixed up, and then they get memory wiped. So they can be put back into Westworld, so they can be raped and killed and destroyed again. And I realized that this couldn't work. If we started remembering our past lives and remembering what was in there in our totality, we would start, because Westworld's a story of Dolores and Maeve, and it's the story of them remembering what's happened to them in incarnation after incarnation and deciding, I don't know what's outside of Westworld, but I'm done with this place and I'm getting the hell out of here. And that's kind of where I've gotten to now, where I've realized I'm done with the insanity and it's time to go home. And I'm hoping that what I'm doing in my journey is helpful to others who also might want to go home.
I have a quote from your book. It says, "No matter how much you moved along in the last life, you are back at square one in the new."